Welcome into the Loochador Podcast as Bucky McMillan is named the head coach for Texas A&M basketball. This is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, David Nuño, Billy Liucci. Take two of my Bucky Ball idea. All right, Academy Sports, we love Academy. We go there often. When Bucky Ball takes off and that offense is scoring 85 points a game at Reed Arena and people are just saying, I'm all in on Bucky, they need to start selling Bucky Balls at Academy. Basketballs.
I like it. Listen, they could have. First of all, by the way, we need to go to Academy. We need to find me like a new fishing pole.
Okay.
It's been years, and I'm going on a big fishing expedition. I'm actually just going to the lake over here, but I'm going to act like you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go like buy a whole new thing just for this one single day trip.
Can I offer advice?
I don't really want it.
I think you're going to like this one.
Thought we're just doing this commercial.
No, I just want to offer this advice. Steve Nagley took me to buy the fishing poles for my sons.
Okay.
He knows his stuff.
Okay,
so we go three guys together.
Go into Academy, or maybe I'll just go with you and we can pick that out.
I can do it now. I go to the meetings.
I am also in the market for some running shoes again. They've got the Brooks. They've got the. I'm going to go get a pair of those.
Yeah. And they sell a weapon, too, if you want one. All right, let's get into it.
I might need a little knife for the fishing in case those gators come.
That's possible.
Where I'm going, there's like a lot of 8 to 10 foot gators.
I feel like you've done this one before, right?
This is different. Those are like 10 to 13 foot alligators. Okay. Those are like dinosaurs. These, I think, but these apparently are a little more aggressive, so we might need a knife or something from Academy. You see me like stabbing a gator in the eye or something.
Can I read you an awesome stat?
Video. And it'd be like courtesy of
Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Saved by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Let me read you the stat Matthew Dawson wrote down for us.
Okay.
Of the 18 coaches that have coached in the last 5 Final Fours, that's 2021 through right now.
So we got him in the Final Four right off the rip.
5 out of the...
This is how you play into a narrative, David.
I just want you to listen to this. Okay. 5 of the 18 were first-time head coaches.
Yep.
11 of those 18 were mid-major coach hires.
Mm-hmm.
2 of the 18 were coaches that previously had Power 5 experience before that job. Bruce Pearl, Kelvin Sampson.
Okay.
I'm just giving that information as we get into Bucky Ball.
One of my buddies, some Aggies are familiar with, Matt Schobel, he just texted me and he said Samford with a question mark. Ouch, on a group chat. And I said, he transferred to TCU. I said, your idol, Coach Fran, you hired him from New Mexico. And before New Mexico hired him, he was a legend at Pittsburgh State, I believe. And your old baseball coach that you cried when he left for Texas A&M, you hired him from UNLV. There's a million examples. There's also a million examples of this type hire that hasn't worked. Or, hell, there's 3 of them at A&M that have worked to varying degrees. In Billy Gillespie, who you felt like could have had a statue built of him, but then he got poached by Kentucky. There's Mark Turgeon, and then, from Wichita State, Gillespie from UTEP, and Billy Kennedy from Murray State. Varying levels of success. But these hires are more common than not in college basketball. It's almost like these mid-majors, and I don't even think Samford's not even a mid. They're like almost like they're new to the game of even being considered a mid. The Southern Conference, they were so bad for so long until he got there. You look at their track record before he got there. So we'll get to Bucky McMillan in a second. Like, it's almost like this level of basketball tends to be the minor leagues. It's like baseball too, because what happens is these coaches can prove themselves against the big boys. They do get opportunities to play up, whether it be non-conference, whether it be March Madness. Most of these hires come after somebody's knocked off a giant in March Madness. Yep. So it is kind of the minor league proving grounds, and that's why there's so much of it throughout college basketball. I mean, find you a successful coach, and you can probably trace them back to getting their start. You know, who did A&M want to hire? Who did the Aggies want? We wanted Chris Beard, that hire. He was at Arkansas Little Rock. Or was it Little Rock? Yeah. You like McCaslin at Tech? They hired him from North Texas.
Yep.
I named the A&M guys. Nate Oates with a very similar background. Alabama high school basketball coach, goes to Buffalo, gets hired by the Crimson Tide. Todd Golden's coaching in the Final Four this weekend. Okay. Bruce Pearl, where did he have the most success before he got to Auburn?
Tennessee.
He was at Tennessee. Where was he about before that? I think it was Wisconsin, Green Bay. So, yeah, these guys are coming up through the ranks, and it almost is like this level is a proving ground. We're going to talk about what we think of the hire and everything, but as far as the concept of hiring a mid-major, and I see a lot of people going, wow, they went from trying to get Beard to this. That process is fairly common in this sport. I mean, hell, last I checked, Will Wade was at a mid-major. Shaka Smart, before he went to Texas, was at a mid-major. There's a million of these. Some of these guys haven't even been head coaches. You look at like Jerome Tang jumping from Baylor assistant to Kansas State. You look at, Scott Drew. Where'd he come from before he was at Baylor? Valpo? Was he at Valpo? Somewhere like that. Yes, Valparaiso. So, listen, we could go on and on. That means not a lot. I'm happy that A&M took the swing. I'm happy that Trev Alberts, I maybe even got out of the comfort zone and said 6 years, $7 million a year for Chris Beard. They took the swing at it. People said there wasn't a plan B. This was the plan B. The plan B was to start and complete a coaching search in short order if the Beard thing fell through. So we're on day 4 of the whole search, and it's over. There were a lot of options, kind of mid-major to some names that when they came up, quite frankly, I mean, I asked any Aggies, raise your hand on who you were excited about when you hear names like Lutz at Oak State or Porter Mosier at OU, Chris Mack. He's at Charleston now, but he had been at Xavier in Louisville. Like, what are the names that were making people? And my only question is two questions. Could you have gone out? It would have been really risky and waited and seen what $7 million a year, $6 million a year would have gotten you. Like the guy from Maryland that just went to Villanova, or could you have got back in on Will Wade? I don't know what those contracts and how.
I saw Will's numbers. That was surprisingly
low.
But
the
buyout.
Can you really go get that? Is he interested in that, or is he just going to coach there for a couple of years and go back to LSU? Like, you got to think about those things, because if you chased any longer, you were going to start getting turned down by mid-majors, because they got to be able to build a quick team. Listen, to me, there was a group of guys. You heard about Huss. People were talking about Luke Murray. I think Huss was in it. I think Mack was in it. I think Bucky, McMillan. Those were, I think, some guys that were there at the very end. And you're looking at those going, who's the best option for Texas A&M right now? And I think with Bucky, a lot of times what you see, David, is an AD or a place try to get away from kind of like, what would you have changed about this last coach if you could, but you couldn't because he is who he is?
What
would you have changed?
I would have.
I'm not talking about on a personality.
No.
I'm talking about basketball.
I think basketball-wise, an offense that we can get excited about. An offense that doesn't have these droughts. Okay? And maybe somebody who felt part of the fabric of the university.
I don't want that yet.
Okay.
I think that's a plus for him, but I'm saying basketball-wise.
Basketball-wise, I want an offense compared to what we had.
An exciting style of play, up and down. Yes. I mean, that's what you see a lot of times in like football. You go, okay, we scored a bunch of points, but we lose a bunch of shootouts. Let's go get a defensive coach.
Yes, correct.
We had a defensive coach. The offense has sucked. let's go get Kevin Sumlin and light this thing up offensively. This place needs that. That's, I think, where we're at in terms of we want to put butts in seats. We want an exciting brand of ball. This guy, it's called Bucky ball for a reason. They're not going to nickname it, even though it's very easy to come up with that nickname when it's guy's Bucky and he coaches basketball. If you watch their little, any few minutes of them playing, any tapes on YouTube or anything, it fits. It's why there's that nickname. It is a brand of basketball that's exciting. They shoot threes. They get to the rack. They make their three-pointers. They make their free throws. It's going to be more exciting. There's no guarantee on what the results are going to be. We'll dive into that. But it will be an exciting brand of ball. Look, man, this is going to be a really tough transition. Let's just be real. What Buzz Williams left it with, I think even like a Chris Beard or a, McCaslin, Grant McCaslin, like those guys even in year one, like they'll bring Beard would have brought a few guys from Ole Miss. He'd had some recruits, but he would have been cobbling a team together in year one, and it would have been nothing like what Chris Beard team would look like in year 2, year 3, and beyond. And that's with the cachet of Beard, and that's with bringing players from Ole Miss and bringing SEC high-end recruits that you were recruiting with you. Because he would have had no Aggies. Pharrell Payne wasn't staying. Solo wasn't staying. Right. It would have been just cobbled. So even and then that would have been the greatest of expectations, and people would have had to somehow understand, like, this still's going to look rough and choppy for a little bit. Meanwhile, you get a guy like, Bucky, and it's like, okay, this right off the rip, I'm going, damn, I just hope he comes in, has some early success and get some excitement going. But I think this could be like something similar to like what you hope is, you don't hope it's Missouri. They went 0 for the conference in year one. But look at just forget about that.
Maybe Vandy?
Vandy's a good example.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's my understanding, and I think he had that Vandy job, and he passed on it because he knew he could get a little something better in this league. I think he was a front runner to get that Vanderbilt job. So, yeah, maybe Vandy. But you look at like Vandy in year 2, right? What did he do? That's year 1, isn't it?
Year 1.
Year 1, he goes to the tournament. You look at the guy at Missouri, right? He goes year 2. They were as good as A&M this year.
Yep.
They were every bit as good as A&M. The wins were kind of matched up. The tournament saying they were 1 seed line behind the Aggies, and that was year 2. So you can turn it around pretty quick. I just think it'll be tough, a tougher year 1. But Vandy's a good example. It's never impossible. But I just think you're inheriting nothing, which is part of why this deal had to get done really quickly. And look, man, I don't know where it would have gone had all of this happened 2 weeks ago. How long has it been since A&M? It's 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be 2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks ago tomorrow, right? Or, Saturday. Thursday, Saturday. 2 weeks ago right now, A&M season ended. Had they started a search then, there's no telling, what was out there, who wasn't locked in, who you could have gotten, maybe a little less sense of urgency. The situation was what the situation was. I think just from looking at the response of Aggies, there's 2 things going on. There's a pretty good feel and understanding of like, I could warm up to this, but, never heard of him till Billy mentioned him yesterday or the day before, whatever it was. Hadn't heard him before that. Didn't even think he would be the hire even when he mentioned him because I've heard of that guy, and then Huss at High Point had some, cachet to him just because he seemed like they were in the tournament this year. Well, Samford was in it last year. They shot a 3-pointer to take Kansas to overtime. He completely turned this program around. He's won everywhere he's been. 5 out of 6 years, won a state championship in Alabama. On almost 100 wins in 5 years. I think he has like every 20-win season there but one. Started off in the COVID year and then 20 wins plus every year. Had 29 wins a year ago, 29-6. Won the Southern Conference for the first time. So there's a lot to like about the resume, the style of play. And David, I asked a lot of people. I called Cole Kubelik, who follows basketball real closely down there. I asked someone I know really tied into college basketball in the SEC, and then a couple other people in and around SEC basketball. He's very well known down there, and had the guy just sat there at Samford, his name would have been, I'm not saying he would have got hired, he might have, but most people in that state would tell you, yeah, he would end up being the next head coach at Alabama or Auburn. He's that highly regarded in those parts.
Yep.
And what everyone has said, including someone I talked to here, he is a very dynamic personality. He's on a group chat with like 4,000 Samford students. And, with the email or text, I hope that sounds like the wildest text message. Could you imagine? I'd have that thing on notification silence.
Yeah.
But he communicates directly with the students. It's all the stuff I said this morning and earlier in the week and everything that I wanted. That was something that I said I thought Chris Beard did a great job of at Tech in Texas. Will Wade did a great job of that. I'm thinking of guys with that. You don't have to be. Those guys were like that at Arkansas, Pine Bluff, or Little Rock, and VCU,
right,
and wherever Will Wade was prior to that.
Sampson did it at U of H.
Well, it's U of H. I'm saying like.
But I'm just saying like, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying like those were two guys that I would have been really excited about, and part of the reason was because of that. You don't have to have been at Tech, Ole Miss, or LSU to do that. Will Wade did it at McNeese. He's done it at Samford, and I think you need that here, and I think you need that in terms of raising money for NIL. And look, there are a lot of people at Texas A&M that push chips into the middle of the table for Chris Beard. That number, Trev Alberts, this was his hire, 100% all him, like all him. So as I sit here today, if it doesn't work, it's all him. If it works, praise him. It's all him.
Right.
Either way, like that's a Trev Alberts hire. Trev Alberts did what everybody wanted him to do, and he said, we're going to do what a basketball place would do, and we're going to go offer Chris Beard 6 years, $42 million, and a massive NIL. And I think he came out of his comfort zone a little to do that, and I think the one role and involvement of some of the big donors was just to say, hey, you can do it. Like, money's there. We got it. We got you. And so he took the swing. Now the question is, all those people that were so excited about the potential of Chris Beard, Bucky McMillan's got to harness some of that excitement. Yep. I saw some deal where ESPN said $7 million NIL commitment. Look, I wouldn't call that accurate. I think that was what was going on with Chris Beard. So in your head, in a perfect world, you go, well, let's keep that same energy, and maybe they can get there. But the reality is Bucky McMillan will have to win some of those guys over, and I hope everybody that was involved in that understands, like, hey, you want to get this thing up to speed quickly, and you want to be really good. This dude's going to need help because of who you're competing against.
Yep.
The caliber player he wants to get. It's going to take, if it's going to work, especially inheriting no roster, he's got to get that support. And the good news is, if you're an A&M fan and you're listening to this, I can state factually, without question, that he's getting announced probably, I don't know if it's been stated yet or not, but it's probably Monday, which is what I said last night and this morning, that was the timeline. And probably getting announced Monday. And I think as early as Tuesday night, he'll be sitting down with some, people that matter, like, and try to get this ball rolling, so to speak. But what I've heard is he is that type of personality. He has that kind of energy. I mentioned like Gary Blair. He was much older than 41 when he got here, but he still had that energy. He's literally out there throwing out candy to the stand. Like, he thinks Bucky McMillan is always going to be thinking of how can I build fan engagement and excitement while also building a basketball program. And I do think that matters here big time, because it's not a basketball school, but neither was Bama, neither is Auburn, neither is Tennessee. Florida, kind of everything school, but really not until like Billy Donovan got there and did that. So these are football schools that have had elite success in hoops of late. And look, I think this guy's been sitting there at Samford watching what these teams are doing, watching what Alabama and Auburn have done. I think he's paid close attention to how they've built it and how they've got it done. Probably particularly Alabama, because it seems like a similar style of play.
Yeah. What's so fun about fun? It can take any form. Be a sacred ritual.
Who wants chicken?
Or a random whim. For us, fun is everything. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.
So now he's got to get on the phone and talk to players.
Yeah.
Portal, recruits, and start building a team. And that has to happen like now.
Yeah, like yesterday. Is that a question? Or
no,
you
I'm
want me to disagree, because you're right. Like,
well, I'm just saying, like,
you get left nary a player.
To me, that's like, he's probably already thinking about that as he's going through the interview process. All right, I have contact with this kid. My coaching staff is coming with me. Who do we know in that area? Let's get to work. And I feel like that's happening now.
Yeah, and look, don't forget, Mitch Cole was there with him, who was here under Turgeon. One of the really great guys that have come through and coached here. I have not reached out to Mitch. I don't know if he's coming or if he's in line to get that job. He's a Birmingham guy himself, so I don't know what that looks like, but he's an associate head coach, so that would be interesting. But just even if not, if so, great. If not, still get a good feel for the place. But yeah they've got to be on it. Like, they're working the phones tonight. There's no doubt. And it's tough, man. If you really think about, like, that's a tough task between now and the time they, finalize a roster.
Yep.
You're going to be looking at portal, Samford kids, probably have to look at JUCO, maybe international. You got to look, like high school ranks, recruiting. So it'll be to some degree hodgepodge, but I like the hire. Like, I'll be interested to hear what college basketball people talk about. I'm sure it'll come up tomorrow at some point on these shows. I want to hear let me hear what Jay Wright says about it. Let me hear what some of these analysts that are completely unbiased, like I don't know, that it's the Andy Katz, the Jeff Goodmans, or the guys that have played college hoops that are analysts now, like that really follow the game. Those guys are like, what does Jay Billis think of the hire? Like, they know everything there is to know about this level in the mid majors, and like the other thing about Bucky that I think is intriguing is he's really big into and someone told me, the same guy that told me, like, hey, these two jobs. I think your boy Puglisi said if A&M would have hired Beard, it was a good bet that Ole Miss was going to go hire him. Yeah. So, I mean, he was going to get an SEC job. Frankly, before like 2 days ago, I wouldn't have thought it was A&M. But he was getting an SEC job at some point. Something was opening up. He was getting it, and by my count, he could have had one already,
right?
Based on what I was told. But this guy was telling me, like, he's an analytics guy. He's big into that. And I think you'll hear Trev probably at the press conference. I bet he'll reference it. Like, because I've been told, like, Trev Alberts is like, he likes that side of the game now. Like, the analytics driven, just feels like he's on kind of Bucky McMillan's on the cutting edge of basketball offensively and just style of play. I had an NBA guy I know tell me that too.
Yeah.
When I was asking about him, said, yeah, he's got a reputation as being kind of that new age basketball, and I think that appealed to Trev. So, look, man, there's a reality to this hire that is, you'll see if it works.
Yep.
And again, this was Trev's pick. If you like the idea of a UConn assistant with 2 national title rings as an assistant, no head coaching experience, if you liked the idea of one of these guys like a Mosier or a Mack or one of these guys that's kind of been through it, had some different levels of success at different places, and they're just kind of does it turn out like, well, I mean, Lon Kruger's not fair because he'd been to a Final Four, but like one of these, guys that have been around and back and solid coach, just leave off the splash. They tried the splash. They couldn't. They took the home run swing, couldn't connect. But are you more excited about that, or would a successful mid-major excite you? And then it just becomes to any fan following it. Well, who was your pick? Who excited you the most?
That was attainable.
Out of the mid-major. Well, I'm saying out of the mid-major ranks and out of that kind of bounce around Power 5 guy with middling success ranks. What excited you? Or Chris Mack had more than middling success, but his success was like 2 jobs ago at Xavier to a really high level where he inherited a program that Sean Miller had built up before he bumped to Bama.
So I was telling you before.
What do you like? Trev Alberts like Bucky McMillan.
I'm intrigued by the hire. I don't know if it's going to work. My teams that I care for, that I root for, I am willing to give it a chance. Okay, these numbers all look good. The personality test that you were telling me about seems like that will work. Let's go. That's where I'm at. Like until I'm given a reason not to, I'm intrigued. Let's see how it works.
Let's be real honest here. There's a reality right now in A&M sports is they're in a proving ground. As we sit here, Aggies are losing at Tennessee. They're got a really rough road ahead of them in baseball, but you've got, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going on across the street in football. As I go out there and watch practices, I'm getting more and more optimistic, like, okay, and again, I've talked on and on about what happened last year, but there's a reality too that Texas A&M and the Big Three has a ton of head coaching inexperience. Now, again, I don't consider Mike Elko an inexperienced coach. This guy's been at A&M, he's been at Notre Dame, not to mention Wake Forest and his whole way of climbing up the ranks. But he's also been a head coach in the ACC, a year here at A&M. But the reality is you now have 3 head coaches with a combined 3 years of head coaching experience at this level. That's almost unheard of.
At this level.
So the pressure is on. Like these guys, there's got to start being some real excitement coming out of these programs. And if there's not, you got to give them a reason to be excited. Yeah. And I think in the case of Bucky McMillan, I think I can read this paper, I go watch the videos, I go watch the clips of them, I could get quotes from around the country, and I can get on board with it, and I can get pretty excited. The proof is going to be in the pudding. With football, like I said, I think the first year was way better than people give credit for because of the path to 8-4, and there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. Okay, and then baseball, they got to figure it out. But the reality is, right now, you've got a lot of inexperience here, and so there is certainly a great deal of uncertainty. But as I sit here today, I like what this guy is about.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be exciting to follow, but he's got an uphill battle. And I think we'd be lying if you said he didn't. But this dude knew that,
He took it.
And he could have waited one more time. He could have waited, and probably in his mind, he could have waited until Bruce Pearl retired, or Lord knows, Nate Oates there. I could see Nate Oates popping to like the NBA one day or something. But like, you could have waited around. You could have held out. It's not like A&M is a 5-star basketball job. They weren't making the offer to him that they made to Chris Beard. And I do know it's a 5-year deal. I know it's going to be for a lot less money, but he is going to have NIL to work with. But he knew what this job was. He knows what his team's going to look like to some degree next year. He knows he's got an uphill battle next year. And he took it. So as much as Trev believed in him, he believed in Texas A&M and what he could do here. So that fires me up a little bit because, again, like I said, I know what I'm saying sounds like, well, what the hell is the Samford coach going to turn down A&M? I mean, there's a world where you could say my career path will be better sitting here for one more year because I know my team's going to be really good and they don't have a roster.
Yeah.
I'm going to a place without a player, but he believes he can get it done. So that's interesting. It makes me like the dude. It makes me like the dude that he said, no players. I don't care. I want to crack at the SEC.
Yep.
Bring me over here. Let's see what we can do. So,
thank you, Billy.
Go. All right, buddy.
That'll do it for the Luchador. Thanks to Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Fun, memories, friendship. We're here for all of it. Here for the big moments and the small ones, too. We're here for unforgettable triumph, momentary misfortune, and the impromptu throwdown. We're out here each day, chasing something great. Call it adventure, call it play, we call it fun. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.